All right, so welcome to what's it called, Stefan?
The Impromptu Debate,
Impromptu debate
episode 1 of potentially 1,
of one. And why is it called impromptu debate, Stefan?
because it sounds a little like masturbate, and that's funny. It's also a mixture of the words impromptu and debate, but
But
it's primarily the first
that's
one.
primarily the first one. All right, so we'll flip a coin. Oh, first we'll generate a random topic and then flip a coin to see who's for the notion and who's against the notion. You'll be heads, I think.
Okay, sure.
And the first randomly generated topic is that the Pope should publicly endorse radically redistributive government policies. Right, your heads, and that's for the...
Yeah, just a point though.
Yes.
We're just taking this as the Pope should take a firm political stance because,
That's how I understood it.
yeah, I'm not completely sure I quite understand all those words, which is a great intro for confidence in me in this debate.
I've got this. Yeah, so if I read it again, it's that the Pope should publicly endorse radically redistributive government policies. So just taking the core sentence there, the Pope should endorse government policies.
Yeah.
The Pope should have a political stance. That's how I read it. So your heads, and that's for.
Yeah.
It is tails. You are against.
Okay.
Damn it, that's the better one.
That is the much better one,
Well, you can
especially for you.
Yes, alright.
Wait, no. For you, this is the better one, I would have thought.
So I'm for that the Pope should enforce
Yeah, I would have thought you would have been with. I would have thought you would have said that's good.
that the Pope should enforce government policies.
Oh, endorse it. Yeah, I would think this would be the easier
Oh, endorse,
one for you.
not enforce, endorse.
Endorse, not enforce. Big difference.
All right. Well, yes. Then in that case, I can start off. Yes, I definitely think that the Pope should listen to the law, rather than the Lord. I mean, we make laws for good reason.
I don't think this is quite what we were going for, though. It isn't should the Pope follow the law.
No,
It's should the Pope endorse new laws, basically take a political stance, is how I understood it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I always get irritated when celebrities do that, and I suppose the Pope is definitely a type of celebrity. So yeah, in the sense of should the Pope endorse laws, as in, what would be an example of that?
Just for example, if the Pope should say he's more left-leaning and just publicly say that, and I don't know, for instance, a while back before it was just a common thing when like gay marriage was a political thing. If the Pope were to say, I think gay marriage is good or bad, and I think followers of the Catholic Church should support or not support it, that would be an example of him taking a political stance at the time.
Well, like I said, I get irritated when celebrities do this, but at the same time, they do have freedom of speech, and they should be allowed to endorse whatever policy they want, even if they are in a position of power.
Okay, but you're not saying... Okay, but even though you have the freedom of speech, sure, you're definitely allowed to, and that shouldn't be systematically stopped, right? But that doesn't mean it's the personal... that doesn't mean the Pope has to do it from a personal morality perspective, which is normally what I take should to mean, like in the question, right? So in this case, the Pope is a religious figurehead with a lot of people beneath him and kind of taking his word as law. And the fact that he's not really talking to a logical side of people, he's talking more to an emotional side of people, which, I mean, you can say most politicians do. But if he were to endorse something and say, like, firmly, let's say the Pope would, like, firmly say, guys, I think, just as a very radical example now, I think democracy is fucking bad, we should abolish it. And he says that the Lord supports this, because this is basically everything the Pope says is almost in default supported by the Catholic Church and thus God in their view. That would almost require a lot of people to change their opinions on this without going through any kind of logical gates, because they believe that the God's word is law. So it would be a big imbalance of power, and while that shouldn't be banned, like you said, he has free speech, it might still be seen as the personal responsibility of the Pope to leave people more with a freedom to make that kind of political decisions for themselves.
All right. Yes, I see your point. And
wait, I was arguing for this.
No, you were arguing against.
Oh, thank goodness! I once saw that in a debate once. It was hilarious.
But at the same time, I can't think of any other. I concede essentially.
Oh really?
I can't see why. Yeah, I can't see the.
I would actually what I would have said for.
Well, we can switch right now. So now.
Sure. This is actually the second part of this that we had planned, is we switch perspectives.
Yes.
On the exact same topic. We thought it would be interesting.
All right. So now you are for that the Pope should endorse.
Actually, I want to hear yours first here.
Against I just did for.
Yeah, now you're against.
That's against. So. I'm against that the Pope should publicly endorse radical. So, as you yourself said, the fact that he should do it
could do it.
No, well, the topic says should.
Yeah.
Is like you said, very different from that he could do it. So that's not even free speech. That's, as you said, almost a figurehead for whatever governmental policy it is that he's endorsing. And also, he's coming from a position of a lot of people listen to the Pope. It's a very authoritative position to be. So when he says something, even if it's something mild, like he is left-leaning, that could have a detrimental effect, probably won't. But if he says something like gay marriage should be banned, that's a pretty high or a really dangerous statement to make. And if it's coming from the Pope, that can have detrimental consequences.
Yes, it can. But the counterpoint is, if he were, for instance, like I can't remember when, but the Pope said a while back that gay marriage should be supported, right?
Yes.
That made a huge difference for gay people. Just like, the Pope is basically Spider-Man, as we all know. He has a lot of power, but he also kind of has a responsibility to wield that power right, and he can. So I would say that if I would say the Pope should endorse these policies, is maybe not all of them, but if the Pope feels strongly about something and it seems morally right to do something, right, and he's certain of it, there's no doubt in his mind, like something as certain as gay marriage is, should be legal. He then almost has a response. He has then the power to change the world for the better, even though he's basically forcing this opinion on people. Because, like we said, his opinion in some cases basically equates God's opinion, when it means these people must follow it. But even if they must follow it, if you must follow the opinion that gay marriage should be legal, I would say that's a good thing, right?
Yes, but it might not always be a good thing.
It won't always be a good thing.
And that's a dangerous thing, to give someone that power and allow him, or not only allow him, but tell him
for him to choose to wield that power.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the end, people do need to do things, right? Because in the end, the only way to make change is to be in a position of authority, right?
Yes. But I would argue that that's not the Pope's job. That's the government or whatever, the president in some cases, anyone else rather than the Pope. That's not the Pope's job.
And why shouldn't he have the same kind of responsibility of other people in power?
Because religion and the state are separated for a very good reason. It's because the religious ideologies do not follow normal and according to all people moral consensus. Not all people follow the same ideologies, and therefore the head of one can't be in charge of what all people should do. And sure, not all people will listen to him, but that power that he wields is too much.
Now, how is that different from example, say in America, with the most recent elections, Donald Trump won, but not with the majority of the people's vote. So the majority of the people were not for a lot of his policies, yet they're still kind of forced to go along with it in the same way, and I would actually say that might be better than the Pope, where people aren't literally forced to go along with it. So, people aren't maybe as directly opposed to the Pope. It's more suggestions and so, like how is his position of power then different there?
Different from the president's position of power. It's a good point. Like you said, the president was also actually not voted in by a majority,
which is fucking ridiculous.
Which is quite hilarious. We can have that impromptu debate as well, but you can't put that position. It's still a position of power, and whether it's the Pope or a celebrity, it's not their job to tell or to have such a great political power. They've got a lot of religious power, and in the case of celebrities, they're very famous. And like I said, the Pope is a type of celebrity, but his ideals are not necessarily good, and therefore he should not have that power.
But it's
yes.
I
agree.
Okay, yeah.
I agree that the president was not necessarily the best choice, and that the majority of people didn't necessarily vote for the president. And I can make the argument that the president should also not be in charge of that. But right now, I'm making the argument that the Pope should not be.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna concede this argument as well, because I agree very strongly that the church and the state should be separate. Like this, joint church and state is not a good thing, and a president is still democratically elected, which is a system that encourages following the people, while a pope is a pope normally for like fucking life nearly.
Yeah.
So like that's more monarchy, dictatorship style thing, which is fine for the church structure but not for politics. So I think in conclusion, since we both conceded this,
we should move
we
on.
do not think the Pope should publicly have a political stance.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus. I didn't even make a good argument on either side. But
no, the church and state thing flipped a switch in my head. I can't argue around church and state should be separate, because they really should.
Alright, let's try the next one. The next one. Should women...
No!
Should women have rights?
Okay, so...
So
one of us are gonna have to argue against this somehow. And our names are Josh and John, by the way. Well, no other names.
You know, giving fake names is just as good as staying anonymous. You did not have to...
No, we're Josh and John. Isn't that right, Josh?
That's right, Josh. I mean, John.
Yes, John.
Alright, so heads, you are for women should have rights, and tails, you are against. You are for women should have rights.
Sucker!
We're gonna switch, my friend. So.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so, for women should have rights. This is a strangely difficult thing to argue for, because it seems like common sense. But, I mean, women have a consciousness, just like other...
Do you have evidence?
Like, I'm a man, I have a consciousness, I don't know what... Okay, so as far as we know, if we assume that people outside of yourself have a consciousness, it is likely that women also have consciousness, and men also have consciousness, which means they can feel suffering, and the entire basis of human rights is to avoid human suffering, as far as I can tell. So women feel... it feels very strange debating this, because it's so...
So
common sense and ingrained, and since women then feel suffering, and human rights is to avoid suffering, it accomplishes the goal by human rights and just being an all-round not horrible person and society by giving women rights.
Alright. So I would argue that maybe they should have rights, but should they have the same rights as men?
Ooh, that is the right angle to go for.
I'm twisting it a bit, but seeing as there are definitely differences between the multiple sexes and genders and so forth, should they have exactly the same rights for
Hold on, dude.
Yeah.
Pause. Like, this isn't the podcast, but we should have made it should men have rights. It would have made this a lot less unpleasant.
Whatever.
Okay, continue.
Too late. So they're better at certain things and worse at other things, and therefore, for instance, men go to war, women go. Well, these days they do go to war, but in the olden days, only men went to war, and then should that not allow them to have certain rights due to certain other qualifications?
I would not say so, no, because the entire reason that only men went to war is because women weren't allowed to, and if they were allowed to, they would have gone. So it's almost like saying, you know, Tommy, you can't eat the candy, Josh, you can eat the candy, and then Josh eats the candy, and the mom's like, fuck you, Josh, Tommy gets like a reward, you're grounded. So in that specific example, I wouldn't say it makes much sense.
All right, so that specific example. And the other thing is, should women have rights? Women are people, so should people have rights to begin with? I mean, what right do we have to give rights?
Well, rights are a socially constructed thing, right? It obviously there is no universal thing that says we have rights, but this keeps drilling down into what is important to prioritize in civilization, and I would say minimizing suffering is a pretty important priority to have, and I can't really argue for why that is. That is just like a core human thing, and human rights are one of in telling countries they need human rights is a key way in minimizing human suffering. So I would say that is why people should have rights, as other countries just putting pressure on countries to alleviate human suffering.
I see. I concede.
Yeah, I would too. This is really impossible to argue against.
Well, good luck, because now it's your turn.
Okay, wait, let me get my...
Okay. So first I'll probably have to argue why women should have rights. And it's, once again, this is easy because you're going first. I'll go first the next time because you keep saying the things that I would have said in anyway. But women should have rights because they're people. They have basic human rights, such as it's a social construct, but it's an important one that we need.
Yes. I mean, no.
And of course, women should have rights, and in most cases, they should have equal rights. Do you have?
You said most cases there.
Pretty much all cases, really. I can't think of an example where it's, but yeah, no, pretty much all cases.
Pretty much.
I can't think.
That's gonna be my attack angle.
You go for that.
Okay.
I can't think of an example where they shouldn't have, but yeah. So in all cases, I can think of they should have equal rights.
Okay. So if we look at it like this, there's two angles I'm gonna come from here. Is the biological angle and the social angle, right?
All right. So, remember, I am a biologist. So, you sure you want to do that?
You're not a biologist yet.
Well,
give it a year or two. Okay, so biologically speaking, and I'm gonna piggyback off a point you made earlier, there are differences between men and women. Now, you pointed out a social difference, as the men go to war and the women don't. But unfortunately, unfortunately, I can't think of any examples here. But I'm sure there are certain cases where, biologically speaking, men are better for one thing and women are better for another thing, right? And then maybe men should have more influence in that thing and women should have more influence in the other thing. Now, historically, this has just been angled to the men's side, right? And not very accurately at all either. And the woman never had any advantages but in anything. But if it kind of balanced out, there might be a case of that improving civilization in general, in the way that having people have more influence in things they're better as. The second one is a societal thing, right? So in this case, it's reflecting an already flawed society where gender roles are already assigned, right? And gender roles encourage certain type of personality traits and certain type of learning and certain type of skills, which also, and it's maybe unfortunate that's the world we live in, but it is the world we live in, and that is another reason to divide that kind of skill set. And I can't, for the life of me, get over the fact that I should argue for women should have less rights. But if it's different kinds of rights,
yeah. Can I remind you that the topic is, should women have rights at all?
Fuck me.
And so you're
okay, I'm gonna have to concede because there's no possible argument.
Right,
and I want to also say that even while making that argument, I felt really gross and slimy. It was unpleasant.
All right, so I think we both agree that yes, women should have rights. That's it.
After a fierce debate that wasn't one-sided whatsoever.
Okay, so you've been going first this whole time, and I'm just sort of piggybacking off of what you said. So I'll go first this time, and if it's heads, then I'll be for the thing, and the topic is murder inherently bad?
Now, this might seem like the previous one at first glance, but as soon as you start thinking about edge cases, it actually becomes a pretty worthwhile debate.
Probably, yeah. Let's see. So if it's heads, then I'm for it. If it's tails, I'm against it. It's heads, I'm for it. Is murder inherently bad? Yes. Because that's... first of all, we as humans and society determine what is bad and what is good and what is evil. And we quite clearly state that murder is evil, murder is bad. Though the question is murder inherently bad? And I would say so, yes, because if you look at inherent, call it evilness, the murder is completely destroying a very complex system, a life in this case. And in almost all cases that would have very detrimental effects, and we're all playing the judge in that case when you take a life, because murder is not just someone dying, it's actively choosing to kill, right?
Okay, so I think you made a good point of it's taking it kind of more away from human morality and saying it is destroying a complex system, making it inherently, kind of the whatchamacallit of the universe. So, yes, but that what you also said earlier is it's almost in all cases, but that's the key. It's not in all cases. So, yes, in 99% of cases, willingly taking another life, I would say is bad from a universal perspective, from a general morality perspective, from a higher minded morality perspective. But in some cases, taking one life, for instance, assassination of a dictator, if we live in a simplistic worldview where things just work out happily, would improve the lives of many others, and the most basic argument is the death of certain people could lead to much more people living much longer. And it basically just comes down to the years of human life lost is sometimes much less than the years of human life gained from that murder. There's the other thing I would like to say is it all comes down to your definition of murder, right? Because is a soldier shooting another another soldier in the shoulder or the heart, would that be
kills him, yeah?
Would that be, or infection, World War I, would that be murder? And a lot of people would say no, some people would say yes, but most people would probably say no, because you're just following orders, you can vaguely see him, but that
but is that still I'm sure you're saying the line is thin, but
fuzzy, I was going to say.
But the is that still murder, whether it's under orders or whether it's self-decided?
That's what I say.
Murder. Yes.
Would you then say that is still murder?
Yes.
So would that then be bad? Because if you don't do this, maybe let's think about, for instance,
even if it wasn't your choice, it would still be bad, even because you are then fighting for the group that murders.
But if the other group also murders,
then both are bad. It's not like a story where there's one good and one bad. Both can be bad.
Yes, true. But what is your alternative? Is to separate from both groups and die alone.
It's to not murder.
Yeah, and then you and your family die, leading to more loss of life. If there's no route in which loss of life, your own included, like I said, if you completely separate from both groups, there's no route where there's no loss of life. You want to choose the route where there's the minimal loss of life. And that might include killing another human, or as most people would say, murder.
It's necessary, but that doesn't make it good. There's a great distinction between what's good and what's necessary.
Would you say so?
Sometimes it's necessary. Like you said, it's necessary to kill a dictator, but that is still a bad action. That is still evil. That is still inherently not good.
Would that not be outweighed by the other good it causes?
How can you make that decision?
Well, you can't. Good and evil are human constructs completely. So the way I measure it, as I measure most things, like I previously said, is human suffering. And I guess that's just my peculiar definition of what makes good and evil. If something minimizes human suffering overall, total, I see that as the good action. And if something causes more human suffering than it needed to, I see that as the bad action. I don't have the view that I would almost say the reason I would say murder isn't inherently evil is because nothing can be inherently evil, because it is just a construct, and we decide how we judge that construct, and that's how I judge it, and according to that judgment, nothing can be inherently evil.
Right. To that point, I concede, because I can't make the argument that something is inherent when it's a social construct. So I concede to that point.
Okay.
And now it's time to switch.
It's time to fucking switch.
So now you're going to be for murder is inherently bad, and I'm going to be against murder is inherently bad. So first of all, euthanasia. When someone is really sick.
Can't believe I didn't go on that.
So then, of course, it can't be bad if you alleviate, as in your own example, alleviate so much suffering for a sick person, and euthanize them.
Okay. So the angle I'm going to come from here is almost the opposite angle of what I previously had. I mean, obviously.
That was the point.
So I would say that the results of murder, right? The results of murder can be good, right? And maybe that means the fact that the murder happened was good. But the action of doing that murder, causing direct suffering for both you and the person you killed, that leaves long-lasting effects on other people, like the guy's family maybe, and it leaves long-lasting effects on you.
Oh no! What if it's the family that euthanized? If everyone benefits from it, if it's like you said, the actions are good overall. The consequences are good overall. How can the action be bad? If all of the consequences are good, how can the action be bad?
Well, not all of the consequences are good, because the direct action is still taking a life, right? And I would almost say that under all circumstances, taking a life is a bad thing. And the only thing that makes that action acceptable is it being outweighed by more good things, right? But that doesn't change the fact that the taking of the life was a bad thing in the first place. It's just outweighed. So the fact that a death happened or a murder happened could be good.
Yeah. So you're basically arguing the famous trolley problem, where you can a trolley's going for 3 people and there's another person on a different track, and you can switch the trolley and then it kills the one person instead of the 3. So the action is bad, but you save more lives. Or in different case, it would be a murderer, ironically, is going to kill 5 people, but you can choose to kill the murderer. That's the argument you're making, essentially.
Yeah, and like that it's still an evil action. You're still choosing to kill people, right? Yeah. But it's just outweighed. But the action itself is still inherently evil.
Then I would like to propose, seeing as the topic is murder inherently bad, what if it's not a person that you're killing?
Would it then be murder?
Yes. Murder by definition is, taking life.
Are you sure? I thought it was taking human life. Can we verify that?
Yes, what would you call it then if you kill a buck, for instance?
Hunting? Or maybe not human life, but life with comparable sentience to human. I always thought of as murder, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Unlawful killing. Ooh, that's interesting. Of another human without justification or valid excuse.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that is much more restrictive than this entire debate would have you think, huh?
Yeah. Huh. Well, with the definition of it being unlawful and only one human killing another one.
Without justification. That kind of... Well, yes, murder is in fact... Okay, let's ignore actually that, because that makes
sense. Well, we can't. Well, those are the facts. And, all right, well, on that
actually,
point... Do you have more?
I don't think I'm going to concede.
Yeah.
But I do not think that murder is inherently evil either. So I think we can conclude the debate with kind of like a tie. Would you be willing to do that, or do you think you can make me concede? I don't think I can make you concede.
No, I was about to concede.
Well, you were?
Yeah, after reading that definition.
Yeah, but that definition fucking sucks.
Well, that's the definition. So
yeah, but like a lot of time definitions isn't really what's meant by a word.
Fair enough. Okay, but yeah. Okay.
But under a different definition, I can't convince you. Do you think you can still convince me? What it is normally assumed to mean.
Convince you that murder is in fact always inherently bad.
No, convince me that murder isn't inherently bad. Like, make me concede.
I mean that's what I meant. Sorry, that it isn't inherently bad. Yes, with the examples that I gave already with euthanization, or if in the case that we were talking about, if it's not a human that you're killing. But
yeah, you know what? No, I do concede, because that euthanization example really does just alleviate suffering and does nothing else.
Right.
And even without that example, my opinion on the matter is obviously that murder is not always inherently bad, and it's very like that's the entire point of this. But it is still very difficult to argue against something that you really believe.
Yeah. All right. So that then means that if we instead of taking the exact definition of murder, but rather sort of twisting it a bit.
But the exact definition of murder would not make for a good debate, because
if we twist it a bit to rather just mean killing, that's a bit broader, then I guess we're both in agreement that it's not always inherently bad.
Yeah. So in conclusion, then the Pope should not get involved in politics. Women should have rights. And big revelations coming out here today.
Profound statements.
Yeah.
Statements. Hey,
in profound.
That's what we.
Why would that was supposed to be the name?
We can call it profound. That's the name of this whatever
show. Yeah. The other one was stupid.
Yeah, I can't even remember
something baiting.
Oh yeah, whatever.
And murder is in fact not
inherently bad.
Well, depending on your definition.
Yeah, if you sort of twist it. Rather, killing is not always inherently bad.
Yeah, I think that's more what we argued for.
Yeah. All right, and then we can conclude. Josh,
I think we can...
James, what's your name again?
Dylan.
Fuck.
Okay.
Nice, that was pretty good and short.
Yeah, cheers, Rasputin.
Thank you so much, Stalin.